Well, everybody, welcome to the Catholic Creatives Podcast, where we interview creatives and awesome people who are members of the group or who are doing cool stuff and involve them in the conversations that we're having. And one of the people that has been a really foundational member of the group, Sid O'Neill, a developer, designer extraordinaire, the instigator of the Slack channel himself, has been invited and jumped on to the podcast here, and I'm really excited to talk to him about a lot of different things today. So yeah, Sid, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, man. I'm glad and somewhat intimidated to be on here, seeing as I've been listening to some of the episodes, and everyone prior to me seems to really have something good to say. Some pretty impressive people. So for everyone that's still listening, this is your disappointment episode.
No, absolutely not. I'm really excited about the topics today. Sid and I have been talking a little bit about what we want to talk about, and we're going to go into the conversation about whether or not designers and creatives should do free work for the church, which was something that we were seeing as that was quite the controversy in the group last week. But yeah, before we get into that, I think it would be good, Sid, to just sort of like get some background on you and for everybody to kind of hear a little bit more about who you are. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name, first of all, I should say my name's not actually Sid.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's what everyone calls me, but my name is actually Sean. Sid is just a nickname that I've had for many years, which really throws people for a loop when they see my driver's license. Maybe you might be able to tell I'm not from the US. It's not that I have a speech impediment. It's just that I grew up in Glasgow in Scotland until I was about 16. That's where I'm from. That's where my family is from. And so if someone from Scotland was listening to this, they would think I sounded like an American, but to Americans, I sound like I'm from Canada or maybe Boston or something. So I grew up there, grew up in a good Catholic family, and I've lived in a few different places all over the world, been involved in different kind of ministry since I was very young. I was born into a charismatic Christian community, which my parents and really my entire family were part of. So I've really been, involved in various different kinds of ministry my whole life. And in 2011, I moved to the States, to Minnesota. I took a job with an organization called St. Paul's Outreach, which some of you might have heard of, which it's a Catholic organization that works with college students. And I worked with them for a couple of years, doing some kind of communications stuff for them in the office, and also working as in the mission field on one of the colleges.
What school were you at?
I was at St. Olaf.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure I still can't pronounce that properly.
Man, I was at St. Thomas University up there for a while. I know a lot of the SPO people. That's crazy. Small world.
St. Thomas is a somewhat easier commute.
Yeah.
So I did spend majority of my work hours in the car. I worked there, and that was great. That was really cool. Kind of introduction to the Catholic scene over here, and then after that, I went on to, I should say, I got married during that time.
It's important.
Pretty important. And then my wife and I moved out to Maryland for a couple of years. I worked for a Catholic magazine called The Word Among Us. It was a devotional magazine. And then for the past couple of years, we've been living in Michigan, which is where my wife's family is from. And I've been running my business, Highland Creative, which is, I guess, what you might call a boutique design agency. if you were if you were wanting to sound super impressive, which is generally what I'm trying to do. So it's basically me and then like 20% of my wife. And we do design, so it's a lot of website design, graphic design, print and marketing, stuff like that. And kind of the primary force, primary direction of the business is we want to work with Catholics and with the Catholic Church. So whilst many of my clients are not even religious in the slightest, kind of the main clients that I work with are dioceses and seminaries and so on. And that's kind of our mission, is to help to revitalize the church, through design, which I think is, I mean, I was so delighted to find out about the Catholic Creatives Group, because that's really, I think that's at the core of what the group is about. And I think it's cool to bring people together in that way, because even when I started my business, like, I wasn't really aware of how many talented Catholics there are out there. And I think that's probably the same for a lot of people. You're kind of working in your little corner and working with your local parish or your diocese or something like that, and kind of, feeling maybe sometimes even a little bit alone in the, why does no one else care about this design stuff, or, and so it's been really sweet to connect with folks through that group. And so that's been great. I mean,
it's been a lot like before I was able to like kind of connect with people in the group as well, it was very much like the voice crying out in the wilderness, like, someone listen, this is important. I think maybe I knew 3 or 4 people who believed the same things as me about the need in the church to like be revitalized through its art and culture, and that design was a big part of that. So I'm super pumped to have you as an ally, man. It's really good to connect in that way. How did you stumble on that mission and decide that that's what you wanted to pursue? Like, feels like there's probably a lot of other things that you could have done.
Yeah. Well, I guess I had well, this is probably the same for a lot of people that end up in design or running a business these days. I didn't have the direct career path. And I think especially younger people can understand that that's more how the world works. There's a lot more lateral movement in careers. And so, when I was a kid, I was what you might call a bookish child. I don't know, some people might relate to this, but I probably read The Lord of the Rings by the time I was like 8 or 9.
For sure.
That's a particular subcategory.
The question is, how many times have you read the Silmarillion? That's
that is the question. I haven't been keeping track, but probably a fair number. Although, yeah, I don't get me started. I'm gonna lose all my street cred now that I'm like a 30-year-old man, and I run a design agency. I can sort of kind of move towards looking like I'm slightly cool.
Yeah.
I cut my own hair and I have a beard and I drink whiskey and stuff like that. But I'm really uncool. I'm one of the least cool people out there. So don't get me talking about Lord of the Rings or Silmarillion.
Well, maybe that'll be a separate podcast. That'll be a
Once we're finished with this one, we'll go on for another 3 hours and record an unlistenable Tolkien cast.
Yeah, I'm not kidding though, man. I'm gonna take you up on that at some point.
So anyway, I was into books and creating stuff when I was a kid, and a lot of that's through my parents, both very intellectual, both were teachers. My dad's a writer. They're both English teachers. My dad was a writer, and so there was always a lot of books in the home. And in fact, we didn't have a TV till I was 9 years old, which I kind of want to experiment with my own kids, because it really forced me to learn to read and to enjoy reading. not having a TV, because like, okay, we let our 2-year-old watch, a small amount of TV, but always, and he's actually really into reading, although he can't read. But he likes looking at books. But just when you don't have the TV, like TVs take up this giant swathe of time. And I think subtracting those things from your early childhood can kind of put you on a creative path. So for me, that's one of the reasons I feel like I became a creative person, was because I had both encouragement from my parents, but also just a lack of like TV or really very many video games or whatever to kind of waste time with.
Yeah.
And I guess also I was an only child for the first like 11 or 12 years of my life, which kind of forces you to read more than you might if you were fighting with your siblings. So anyway, to cut a long and potentially boring story short, I was pretty creative, and going through school, I always liked English. But then near the end of my kind of high school career, I started to realize, well, if I want to have a good career, then I should probably focus on things like computing and science and math. And so I've kind of focused on those things the last couple of years in high school. And I actually was accepted to Strathclyde University, which is in Glasgow, to study electronic engineering. And I went away for a gap year before that, and lived in Detroit, Michigan for a year, with a lay brotherhood of guys, doing various kind of service there, or at least that's what I was supposed to be doing. I don't know how good I was as an 18-year-old at the service, which involved like, things like cooking and cleaning and other things that 18-year-old guys are not stereotypically amazing at. But when as I was coming back from my gap year, I realized I don't actually really want to be an engineer. Mm-hmm. You make a lot of money and you might really enjoy it, but for me, I knew like I needed that creative outlet in my work, mm-hmm. to be happy. Or I guess I kind of sensed that, because it's a little dumb to say you knew anything at the age of 18. Basically, you don't know anything till you're like 25, and all you learn when you're 25 is, oh, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
But so I changed my major to journalism and creative writing, which is about as opposite to electronic engineering as you can get. And went through 4 years of that 4-year degree, and realized by about the third year, I don't want to be a journalist, because that's a depressing profession. And actually, the kind of writing that you often have to do in journalism is not particularly creative. Everybody in journalism degrees wants to be Hunter Thompson, but mm-hmm. The only way Hunter Thompson got to be Hunter Thompson was he wrote like stolid articles about like car crashes and such and such first. And also he was a genius. You're not a genius, so you're just going to be just slugging the same beats and police blotters and stuff. I did not want that.
Yeah.
So so after I left college, I kind of did a few different things and didn't really settle on a career. I did some web design. I did a decent amount of web design, and kind of tried that, but it wasn't really till I moved to the States in 2011 that I started to really become passionate about my identity as a Catholic, and start to think, okay, kind of look at the building blocks I have here. I really hate the term creative, but I feel like I'm a creative person. I'm decent with technical stuff. I know how to use computers, but I also really want to work in something that feels like it's really meaningful to me. And for me, one thing that I'm passionate about is being a Catholic, and more so. And so when I moved to the States and started working for SPO, that was kind of, I guess, a kind of an inflection point where I started to move more and more towards, okay, I really do want to serve the church by the work that I do. And that's really what I was doing for SPO. And, when I moved there, like, I thought they were very, very Catholic, because Catholicism in Europe is not quite as radical in a lot of ways, or at least the Catholicism that I grew up with was not quite as radical.
Mm-hmm.
So at first, people signing their emails with "in Him through Mary" and stuff like that, which kind of threw me for a loop because I wasn't used to that, degree of. So yeah, I mean, a lot of things changed when I moved to the States because I also moved to Minnesota, and back when I was in Scotland, I was pretty funny, decent sense of humor, and then I moved to Minnesota, and every time I would tell a joke, people would either get offended or just not understand what I was talking about. So I basically had to just wipe the slate clean. like back when I was in Scotland, I had this whole line on like self-deprecating humor. You're like running yourself down for the comedic amusement of your chums. That just doesn't work in Minnesota because people feel really bad for you and they want to really like pray for you and stuff. And it's like, I don't actually think that about myself. I'm just, so I had to completely reinvent myself. And I still don't really have a sense of humor because all that's happened is I got married, I had kids, and now I have dad humor, which is, it's just lowest common denominator.
There's lots of puns,
It's basically, yeah, it's just puns, and then slapstick. So I guess I changed a lot more and into becoming more Catholic and starting to realize that, and then I guess I still really felt like I wanted to write, and to me that kind of seemed like writing and publishing was like the ideal. Maybe I'll get to do that, maybe I won't. Right. And all the time I was doing these kind of creative things and making websites and this kind of stuff. But then I moved and worked for Word Among Us, and which was a great job, and I really learned a lot from the people there. Like just an amazing group of people that I got to work with. Really, really smart people. But it sounded a little bit like Donald Trump there. Just magnificent people. But I realized through working there, yeah, I don't really want to be a writer. I like writing, but I don't want to do it as a job. There's a thing about writing as a job that kind of kills it for you,
Yeah.
And specifically writing, I think writing exercises a particular muscle in your head or something, which if you're doing that as a job, it just kind of kills your ambitions, I think, or it did for me anyway. So then I realized, okay, I don't really want to do that, and I realized I was still called to kind of design, really, and website design, graphic design, all things that I really enjoyed, and I found through doing those things throughout my life that I could get really into those things, and it didn't really kill the joy in it for me when I was getting paid for it. So when I moved back to Michigan, we decided to move back because we had kids. We now have 2 kids, and our family was here. My folks live here in Michigan now as well, and I wasn't really sure what to do. I started looking for just like a regular job, and then I sort of through getting a couple of contracts, I was like, hey, maybe I should start a business because people are paying me money to do stuff that I really enjoy and I seem to be okay at. So yeah, and then at that time when I was starting the business, like one of my first big projects was working with Sacred Heart Seminary, redoing their website, which I got to work on with a good friend of mine who's works on development at the seminary, Edmundo Reyes. And I realized through doing that, hey, there's like something that I'd known already, but there really is a big need for this stuff in the Catholic Church. And specifically in the American Church, there's actually some people have a budget to pay for design and for websites. So you could actually have a feasible business out of this, and do the thing that you're passionate about, which is helping the church while still making a living and having a family,
Why do you think it's so important that the church starts to value this stuff? Like, obviously you think that there's a need here and it's something that really is going to help the church. Otherwise you wouldn't be so passionate, about doing it for that specific demographic. So why does the church need that?
Yep. I think it's twofold. Well, first I would say, I don't think it's a new thing for the church. I think it's a thing that the church has forgotten. I mean, if you look throughout history, the people that preserved art and were patrons of the arts and you know the most beautiful things that were created. I mean, if you look at churches as a form of design, I mean, I think in some ways the website can be a form of it's a similar labor to the craftsmen, you know, in the 14th century or whatever, who are making these churches. If you're making a website for some Catholic purpose, you're also trying to reflect the glory of God in what you're doing. And I think that's something that the church had forgotten, maybe over the last, you know, maybe the last century or something like that. And there's really a twofold reason that we should come back to that. One is really just a practical one, which is if you make beautiful things, it attracts people. You know, and that's actually a real ministry, to make something beautiful that attracts people to the church. If you, I mean, it's not worthwhile if you're just attracting people to the thing that you made. But if you, through creating something that reflects God's glory, if you can draw them closer to, you know, the Eucharist and the sacraments and coming back to church and stuff like that, I think that is very, very valuable. And it's really, really a very useful form of evangelization. And you can see like this worked very well for Protestant churches. I mean, for a number of years, and possibly still, Protestant churches, specifically mega churches, were putting budgets into making websites and stuff, and they were just growing their congregations like crazy. And I think in the Catholic Church, we actually have, not to be ecumenically insensitive, but I think we have an even deeper wealth of things to offer than many of these mega churches. As a Catholic, I would say all of them. And so it just makes sense. Like you don't have the most precious thing that you want people to see and put it, you know, bury it in the ground. You create a nice museum that attracts people to come and see it, or you know, if you own a beautiful diamond, then you set it in a nice gold ring and you wear it, you know. Mm-hmm. And so I think this practical aspect is just so valuable, because the church has been losing people for a number of years and not really replenishing the numbers except in certain areas. And I think when we can bring people back, and you know, especially through websites and through good design, is a way that we attract younger people nowadays. Mm-hmm. When we can bring people back with those things, that's a very, very valuable form of evangelization. And not only just bringing people back, but then also creating things that make people part of parishes feel like they're part of something that's really beautiful and worthwhile. I mean, there's a whole wealth of really like branding and marketing materials out there, which explain how branding materials make people feel about a brand. And you know, there's all these things out there which you could feel good about, and the way they're branded gets you involved. Like, look at all the people playing Pokemon. You know, I mean, let's be honest, it's the most vapid, stupid, useless thing there is, but people are enjoying it, and hundreds of people got onto it is because they were smart about how they branded it and marketed it, and then their infrastructure was well done, you know, and kind of the word of mouth stuff was well done, stuff like that. Now, if something like Pokemon can attract that many people, you really got to think that the church can do that if it markets itself well. Now, there's a fine line between marketing and truth. Like, I think in a lot of contemporary secular marketing, truth is not really that important. You know, like it doesn't really matter as long as you get people to buy your product. Obviously, within the church, there needs to be truth in what you do. But yeah.
It turns out, though, that it's really hard to get people to continue to buy your product if it's a bad product, you know, exactly. Just in general. So in a way, truth does matter. It may not matter in the first ad that you put out, but ultimately now in this world of like social media and like very quick communication between people, the real power of marketing is not in creating an ad or doing something that's like a stunt. You know, it's just in getting people who really like what you're doing to talk to each other about it and making that easy, you know? And I think that there's something really, um, there's something really interesting though about the process of design that helps you to ask the questions about your own product. I guess like what you're trying to sort of get out there, in order to help revise that, or at least to hone it for the people who you're supposed to serve. I think branding especially is the case in point there. So many churches and organizations just kind of skip over that because they think it's like a, you know, like 54 pixel by 40 pixel like image you put on your site, like, and on your business card. It's like the smallest thing, the least important thing. But the process of doing it is so vital for like understanding who you're speaking to, understanding yourself, and honing your message and I guess your services to that purpose, right? It's very sacramental.
Yeah.
Design is in a way.
No, that's absolutely right. And I think that like helping churches do that is a tremendously valuable service to them as well. And I think just like I did struggle with these ideas a little bit a few years ago when, you know, I was helping to market different things for donors to give money to like a Catholic cause or something. And kind of just wondering like, how honest are we being? Like we're being careful to present this in the best light. And is that really truthful? Which I guess is a kind of it's a very like masochistic, like Spartan approach to like kind of here's Catholicism, like it or lump it. But I came to realize, you know, through talking to people that, okay, you are giving people the thing in the best light, but you're not being dishonest by doing that. You're just displaying it in its best light. And also this is a valuable thing, like, you know, to get to show people a way that they can spend their money in a way that benefits, you know, God or the church rather, that you're actually helping them. You know, which is kind of it's somewhat counterintuitive, especially for someone who's not from America.
Yeah, no, I think that there's something really interesting there too that I have thought a lot about, in that it's not like marketing isn't just like, it's not just a temporary thing like getting somebody a new pair of jeans. Like it's a very deep thing. And I think that there's also something about putting someone in a place that is beautiful, or like giving them an appearance that is beautiful, that helps them to value themselves more. Like if you think about, I was just seeing this thing on Instagram, like a professional hairdresser that just holds on to his clippers and kind of hairdressing equipment as he walks around walks around the city. And when he sees a homeless person, he stops them and asks if they would like a haircut. And then he gives them this really professional, really cool haircut. And as I was watching it, I was thinking, my first thought was like, okay, like you're just doing that as a marketing stunt for yourself, but you're not actually helping anybody by giving them a haircut. Like they don't need a haircut. They need like so much more than that. Right. Yeah. And then as I was like watching their faces when they looked at themselves in the mirror, it was like, no, he was helping them to see themselves and their own dignity by giving them a haircut. Like by making them look more beautiful and presentable, he was helping them to understand themselves as beautiful, right?
Yep.
And there's something about design, especially for the church, that is like deeply valuable for the church, because the church itself needs to be called back to a memory of who she is. Like she is beautiful, and she's become content with like not being that, right? And until like those of us who are able to sort of help her do that, become beautiful, the standard is not going to change. And by that not changing, it's going to impact everything, all of the ministries, not just like who are seeing the website. It's going to impact the priest and the way that he talks. It's going to impact the staff. It's going to impact everybody that's sitting at mass that's been coming for 50 years, everybody.
Yep. No, that's absolutely right. And that's kind of the second reason that you want to do these things is, one, there's a practical aspect, but two, there's just this whole, like, it's intrinsically good to make beautiful things, in the service of God, and you're emulating the Creator, that you're drawing closer to God and you're helping other people draw closer to God, not particularly in a practical way, but just in the sense that you're putting beautiful garments on the church and you're connecting truth and beauty, which are ultimately the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a really good place to sort of bring in that conversation that David Calvitas started on Facebook when he posted that very ugly, atrocious website and the rant began. We were talking about how should we as creatives help the church, and whether or not we should volunteer our resources, our design to the church for free to help her do these things better. And there were two sides, right? There was like one side, which I think was kind of the majority of designers were saying, no, this is a really bad idea. We should not give our stuff away for free. We shouldn't reach out to this church that has this horrible website and say, hey, we're going to redesign it. And then there's this other kind of faction that was saying, well, if you're going to be critical, then you have to do something about it. You can't just sort of sit back as an armchair philosopher and say, hey, you guys should change, and lay heavy burdens on their back without helping them to make that switch. So what was your perspective on that conversation? What are your opinions about this? I know you've thought about it for a while. It's your profession. So what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah. Well, my first thought is I love those conversations. I love to see those on Facebook because I think they ruffle feathers and they get people talking, and there's obviously a lot of people that are passionate about this stuff, which is great, because I really don't want to be part of a group where everyone just says everything's great all the time and there's no practical, which is fine. I mean, there's not good sense in just rustling people's jimmies for no good reason, but so to speak. But I think like there's a real practical reason to why we have this group, and I love to see those conversations because I think there is practical good to come out of a honest commentary. Like when I was in college in my creative writing class, especially when it started out, you would bring your thing that you'd written to the class and you would read it out, and everyone would say, that was really good. Great, good job, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
The reason people did that wasn't necessarily because they thought your thing was good. It's because they realized, kind of as a group mentality, if I'm super positive about everyone's stuff, everyone's going to be super positive about my stuff. But that's completely useless in terms of criticism. I mean, right. If everyone says, yeah, your stuff is great, you're not going to change anything.
Right.
And let me tell you, the first year university students, creative writing is not going to be that good. Which if you are that person, you won't believe, because you've gone your whole life with people telling you, hey, you're great at writing. But then you go to university and it turns out, you might have some raw talent, but you're not really very good. Yeah. But sorry for the sidebar. Anyway, yeah. So I love to see that conversation. And I think with that second group of people saying, well, you can't just say that, you need to help them. You can't just say this is rubbish. That's true. There's no good reason to just criticize. If you're just criticizing because you want to feel good about yourself, or you derive some kind of pleasure from putting other people down, well, obviously that's wrong. And I think as creatives, that we definitely do have that that gene within us. Yeah. I mean, I certainly see it within myself. I can't comment on anyone else, but I know there's always a slight tug to to put down bad work or something, because really it does make you feel better about your work. And also there's kind of a camaraderie in it with your fellow designers. So I think if you're just doing it that way, then that's a negative thing, and I don't think that should be done. But I do think that the initial kind of solutions that the people on that side were coming up with were not the correct solution. I think it's right that we should want to help these people and not just comment on how bad they are. But I don't think directly going to them and saying this is rubbish, I'm going to fix it for free. I don't think that's the right way to go about things.
And why do you think that? Why do you think that that's not the right approach or the most helpful approach?
Well, there's a few different reasons. I think really there's a reason why it's not good for you as an individual designer, and there's a reason why it's not good for the church as a whole. As an individual designer, I think it's not good for you because you're not going to be able to feed your children if you have children, or buy beer and pizzas if you don't have children. I don't know what people without children do with their free time. Well, I can't quite remember back that far. It's been a whole 2 and a bit years since we had the kid, and I have vague memories of having a social life, but they're not very clear. Yeah, so you just can't do that because you can't help everyone. Like, there's how many parishes are there with bad websites out there? There's got to be 1 or 2, right? Mm-hmm. You can't just go and help them all. It would be not feasible for your life. Right. So obviously for you as an individual, it's not possible to do that. But in a more larger sense, for the church and for creatives within the church, it's not good because, well, for one thing, it totally devalues what you're doing. I think we were talking previously, and there's a study that I read which showed that when a store gives you something as a freebie besides something else, in your brain you automatically devalue whatever that free thing is. And actually, I think it also devalues the whole item that you're getting, the whole package as well, because there's this kind of thing that happens in your brain when you get something for free, where you're thinking, perhaps subconsciously, well, why am I getting this for free? Must not be worth anything. Or you must have some kind of ulterior motive for giving it to me. It must not be that good. Something like that. And I think when you go to a parish and say, I'm going to do all this for free, that's like that zero number, which is the number of dollars you're going to bill them. That's about what they're going to value your thing at. And I know I've talked to a number of different people that have done things for free. Heard people in the group as well, and they all like what you see time and time again is they don't value the thing they were given, so they don't use it the way it's supposed to be used. They don't put any effort or resources into it, and you sort of can't blame them because they got it for free. So clearly in their minds, you didn't really value it, so why should they value it? So, as we're talking about, I think that actually makes us all take a step back if you're doing things for free within the church, because as a whole, then people throughout the church start to think websites are not worth anything, or design. Right. Websites are kind of the obvious one, but really it could be design or really any kind of creative effort. So as a whole, it kind of devalues design within the church.
So it can really like perpetuate the problem that we're seeing here, where giving them a good website might help them a little bit, but it would perpetuate their like lack of value on beauty and presentation and design, right?
Right.
Yeah. I think there's a lot there. I mean, this is a pretty large principle just in charity and in nonprofits that a lot of people are talking about now outside of the design world. I mean, just in general, if you think about things like Tom's giving shoes away for free, and these South American communities, super disruptive to the economy and actually perpetuating the shoelessness problem there, that sometimes giving products and services away for free are actually like harmful to the people that you're giving them to, specifically because you're changing the value that would otherwise be naturally understood and therefore pursued.
Right, exactly, and that's the issue with a lot of parishes specifically is they don't value things and they don't use them properly, and then the practical benefits that you can get from those things uh, actually don't materialize, and in fact in a lot of cases it can make them work less efficiently than they were before. You've actually harmed them by giving them this new system that they don't put the time in to learn, and so they're not actually even doing as well as they were with their hacked together system previously in the case of a website, or they're not updating the website because they haven't taken time to learn it. So whereas they had this weird looking Comic Sans neon blue website that got updated every week, which actually you have to give it to those people, like that church in the link. It looked kind of wacky, but it looked like there was some fresh stuff on there. Like they were actually updating it. And that, I think that, that's definitely worthwhile. And yeah, so you're actually harming them. So I guess the larger question really is, I think that is a wrong way to donate your services to the church. That's harmful on an individual level because it's not efficient. It harms people. It means that you can't make a living as creative, which I think is important because we all have different skills, and I think that if God has given you a specific skill, ideally you should be able to do that, serve your fellow man or God, and earn enough to support a family in an ideal economy. I know that's not necessarily the case for a lot of people, but I think that's a very worthwhile and understandable goal. I don't think it's wrong to expect to work hard and get paid for it. I don't want to sound like I'm arguing for the minimum wage here,
right?
But I think if you do hard work and it's something that's valuable, you should get paid for that.
So what do you think we should do? Like if we're compelled to help the church, what ways should we approach working with the church? Do you think that means like just completely treating them like any other client and just kind of marketing to them specifically, or is there something different that we can do that that would be helpful?
Well, I had some ideas about this. I'm sure lots of other people have ideas too. I can only speak from my own experience, and I guess there's two things I can think of. One is for some Catholic clients, where I can afford to, I'll give them a rebate if I really I'm interested in their mission, or rather, I think their mission is really something that I can get behind. Because for me, there's a number of factors going into what makes me take a job. And for most businesses, I think it should be the same, which is, okay, there's a factor of how much money do we have in the bank, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've made some websites that I'm not super excited to show people just because, hey, I need to pay the bills, right? I mean, you do your best, but it's not the stuff you're like, hey, I'm so excited to work on such and such a thing. Right. But then for other projects, I'll give them a lower rate and kind of do my best work that I can, maybe go a little bit further, because I feel like being part of that mission is something that I can afford to do. And that's one of the factors that goes into taking a job. Like, I think you charge more for the jobs which are just work with no real emotional connection. And then you can charge less for the jobs where you feel like, yeah, we're really making a difference here, and this is why people take equity when they join a startup, or they work for free for their family or something like that, which is a terrible idea. Don't work for free for your family. Don't work for family at all. But yeah, so that's one thing, is I think it's possible to give better rates to people who you really are aligned with their mission. But you can only do that if you have a number of other projects where you're actually making regular rates. So one thing I'd like to be able to do, and I've kind of been able to do, is set aside a small portion of my time to do much cheaper work for clients that I'm passionate about their thing. You can't do that for all your stuff, obviously.
Yeah.
That's one way you can do it as an agency, which might not apply to everyone. I think in a larger sense, one way that I feel that my wife and I have done this is we've created a few different apps, newevangelizationapps.com. We've got 3 apps, and they're just for iPhone. And basically what that came out of, I'll tell you what the apps are. There's one which is for praying the rosary. There's one which is for praying the Chaplet of Divine Mercy. And there's a Lent companion one called Lent Buddy, which just kind of reminds you of what you should be doing during Lent and helps you keep track of your Lenten devotions and stuff like that. We started with the rosary one, and the reason it started was because my wife was trying to pray the rosary using a very well-known Catholic app, and it was probably having a counterproductive effect on her her prayer time, because this app has just an ugly app, first of all, to start with. Maybe we know what we're talking about here, but they have a way you can pray the rosary on it, and it's like someone's put some rosary beads on a table, taking a picture of them, and then you kind of have to tap on the beads individually to go around. And if you accidentally tap on the wrong one and it skips ahead, if you try to go back, it flashes up an alert and says, please stick to the order. Which happens like all the time, because when you it's just not very well designed. So that was kind of something that was like, well, we need this for us. And actually, I think a lot of people would benefit from this. We kind of had to look and didn't see any rosary apps out there which kind of fit what we were looking to have. And so we created this app, which is free and which is very simple. It's just a simple graphical representation of the rosary. It kind of, in contrast to most of the Catholic apps out there, it's more kind of minimal in nature, and it doesn't have Caravaggio behind it. It doesn't have that kind of ornate aesthetic to it. So I guess Brian Holdsworth would.
Yeah, Brian. That's what I was going to say. You might have to talk to Brian about that. He might be a little bit up in arms.
Well, having said that, so basically the idea was to create something that was very functional and kind of directed at people who are used to kind of more minimal apps, and with the idea that we would distill what was good about the physical experience of praying with rosary beads and say, okay, what's good about that is the practicality and the kind of the framework of you're going around a circle and you're kind of, it's repetitive, and we wanted to distill that down into something that would work on a phone, and then add a couple other things. And so you can see what mystery it is. You got the words of the prayers, which potentially could be useful for people who are new to the church, who don't know a Hail Mary off by heart, which to some of us might seem crazy. Like, how do you not know the Hail Mary off by heart? But that, I think that could be useful for some people. So we created this app and we put it out for free, and kind of really just with the idea of, hey, we wanted this for us, and we want to help other people. We want to spread the rosary, and get it out to people, and we want to fill this perceived gap that we saw in what was available for Catholics, and recognizing that it's only a gap. We're not trying to replace rosary beads, or we're not trying to replace even the scriptural rosaries that are out there, where you get to look at a nice picture of some biblical scene or whatever. This is what we're looking for, and this is what we wanted, and this is a way we think we can bring people to Christ, and to pray in the rosary, which is just an amazing thing. I put that out for free, and that took a very long time to make, but it feels like it was an efficient way to do something free because of the thousands and thousands of people that it's going to impact. So whereas with the parish with the bad website, if you change their website, that's only really going to affect their parish. Potentially, if you do something like create an app and put it out for free, you could be affecting the whole church.
Right.
So I mean, that's one way that we've kind of seen to kind of serve the church with a free ministry. And I guess I'd be kind of interested to think of other analogs to that. I
Yeah.
think that the main thing in that case is you're serving the whole church, because anyone could use this, and it goes out to many people, and it's very efficient, and it's feasible to do that while still making a living.
And somehow that is avoiding the problem of devaluing design. Why do you think that it avoids perpetuating the problem in that context?
Yeah, well, I mean, in that context, app design is already, I mean, that's completely sunk. So, I mean, our app is not changing that. People don't want to pay for apps. I mean, and it's kind of a crazy market, and it's not a very healthy market. I mean, another great reason to put out an app for free is you're not going to make any money on an app in the App Store. I mean, the top small percentage of people are making enough to pay their developers. Everyone else is not. And that's because that market is just the way it's being set up. And I think really Apple are complicit in this, in the way that they've set up their store, but then, just the way that it's gone, and, kind of the advertising, the whole way that the advertising business model has changed things over the past few years. It means that market is completely, it's completely destroyed anyway. So, and within that context, that's what people are looking at, so, in that case, there's not a feasible case for us. There wasn't a feasible case to make something free, or to make something that would cost money enough to pay for my time making it, that people would actually get. If you want to make money on the App Store, you have to go big or go home, basically. So we're not a 20-person team with millions of investor dollars. So that was kind of what we could do. But
I do think that there's a real difference in that. If I just being somebody who's working in the agency world, thinking of going to a parish that has a really bad website and see it, like, whether it's so bad, it's like they do not know that it's bad, and they don't care that it's that bad, and they clearly aren't willing to spend money on this. Like, if I think about approaching them and saying, hey, I would love to help you by giving you something for free, I would feel really horrible about myself working with them. Like, I would just be, I know that they would look at me as someone who is, oh, the young guy that knows computers. Like, that's pretty much like the value that I feel like they would put on what I was doing. And it just, I guess in like thinking about what that relationship would look like, it feels like it would be a very demoralizing one, and one that wouldn't help them ultimately at all, really. Whereas like I don't know, thinking about putting out an app, it's like I can skip having some sort of relationship where someone else could derail the help that I am able to like do. Say like you could affect 10,000 people in this parish, but you have to go through all of those channels to do it. Whereas you could affect 10,000 people with making an app for free. No one is going to control that and make it hamstrung, by whatever feedback or devaluing kind of lack of understanding of what it should be. They're not going to be able to do that. You have control. So
yeah, and I think it's a practical question of efficiency, and that we hope. I mean, I hope that my apps are fairly well designed and kind of show the value of good design. A lot of people like them, some people hate them. You get. I mean, when you put out an app for free, you get a lot of feedback, which I don't always have time to really respond to. And you do get the occasional like 1-star review. But we hope that that by putting that out there and demonstrating this is how a well-designed app could look, which is the goal. I mean, whether or not we satisfied that goal is up to anyone that downloads the app. But that's a practical way of both serving people, but also there's an educational component. And so I think that the real thing that needs to be done is educational rather than these individual things. Educating people within the church is really where our mission should be at. You know, right. There's two ways you can do that. One is you can just straight up educate people, you know, and write about it and talk to people about it, and, you know, collaborate with people like in the group on ways to show people the value of design. And then the other way you can do that is where possible, when you find a parish or diocese or whatever that's willing to pay for good design, then you take that and you do your absolute best to give them, you know, something beautiful that really works for them.
Right.
Because that drags, in the same way that free design that's not very good drags down the market. Design that you got paid for, which is really, really good, that drags things up. And then, you know, such and such a parish says, oh, we saw, you know, this on that parish's website, and we want something like that. And right. then you say, okay, that's going to cost you 30 grand, and then they back down, but or whatever. But it's constant, like, educational process of,
right.
Okay, you know, this is why this is worthwhile. This is why, you know, this is the result that these parishes are getting. And I think right now there's not enough conversation about what's been happening within the church and the good results people have had from doing things. I mean, there's really great conversations happening in parishes about people becoming disciples and you know, sharing their faith. And, you know, in my parish we have that, where there's really been a move towards an increased understanding of discipleship, and we have, you know, small groups that have started up, things that you wouldn't have really found imaginable in the church 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. But I think a lot of that comes through just, there was very high level conversations about this, and people are sharing amongst different parishes. And I don't think we necessarily really have that conversation yet to do with design and websites. I think it'll be an ongoing process, but I think education is the main thing.
Oh, but we're starting that conversation, man. That's what we're doing right now. We're on this podcast.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I guess my hope would be that people who are more articulate than I am would join that conversation. But,
yeah. Okay, so what it sounds like we're saying here is that the way to help the church the most in this specific problem, which is design, aesthetic, etc., beauty, is to educate the church on the value of those things. And the way to do that, the road to do that, is by one, collaborating with the right people, and two, possibly not collaborating with anyone and just showing the church by doing something yourself. And that, like, whenever we're trying to decide how to approach taking on a client within the church, giving them a discount or giving them work that would be like lower going rate than normal, the question that we have to ask ourselves there is that, do these people already really value this enough to where this isn't going to hurt like their this isn't going to like devalue it. They really are going to like appreciate it drastically. And two, are they going to allow you to have enough creative control to be able to come out with a fantastic product that really does make an impact visibly? That is another big question to ask when looking at taking on a client in the church. Because if, one, that person doesn't value it and they're asking for it for free, even if their mission is awesome, they're not going to be able to, it's going to ultimately hurt them, right? Yep. Like we were talking about earlier. But two, maybe they value it a ton, but they've never worked with a designer before, and they don't understand how that process goes, and they have really strong opinions, and you can sense that they really wouldn't end up letting you be the professional and make the design decisions that you need to make a good product. You still have to walk away from that one, even if they value it, because ultimately what you produce, you don't have enough control over to be able to know that that's going to make an impact, right? So I think it's much simpler, much simpler to go with just doing something yourself that's a passion project. But of course, on that end, there's zero money usually.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's the thing. And I think, I mean, it's hard to tell people to do those things. That kind of has to be born out of your own desire to make something happen. You can't tell people go out and do this passion project.
Right.
But yeah, in terms of giving people stuff for lower than it's worth, I reckon a lot of people that run agencies in the group would disagree with me on this. But I think as long as you make them aware exactly what the discount that they're getting is, so that you actually have that on the invoice. Here's what this would have cost you. Mm-hmm. Here's what people would pay for this. Here's what I'm going to cut it down to because I believe in your mission. And then, yeah, it's the way you approach clients and it's the way you talk to them about what you're doing for them. That
right.
I mean, with some clients, like they would just say, "Hey, we want this. We trust you. Here's our budget," and then you can just go and do whatever. And they trust you because you're a professional and they've hired you.
Right.
Those are some of the best clients. But then I think also with clients that are very involved and want to really have their hands on the reins, there's also a real there's a real scope for having a conversation of explaining to them, yes, you really have a clear idea, but let me bring in these studies and these statistics and let me kind of change your mind about this and mm-hmm. let's make this idea a little bit better and polish it up. And
right,
these are all things that ideally you should be doing. I don't know if I always do a great job of them, but that's, yeah. And I think that goes for every client, but especially within the church where you generally know that there's a good chance you're going to be dealing with people who don't appreciate exactly what you're going to be doing for them.
Yeah. So I think that in sort of closing this up, what I would encourage people to do in the group who do want to really help the church on both sides of this conversation, that one, when evaluating like what to give away and if that's ever going to be done, even just like who to work with, the evaluation, I think this is part of my personal philosophy, but should be ultimately based upon the person that you're working with, not with their mission or how bad or good their marketing already is. And that if you're evaluating a job, evaluating the person that you're going to be working with is probably the most important thing. And you're asking questions that basically should be telling you whether or not that person already values design. And if not, the best thing to do is to educate them. And sometimes the best education is not taking a job and saying no, as much as that hurts the heart in some ways. The church needs to be told no often in this specific niche, because it needs to learn the value, and it's never going to learn that unless people say no. So that's one thing that I would encourage people to do, is be willing to have that no ready to throw out when you feel like you're seeing a lack of value on what you're presenting. But then the other thing would be really ready to jump into it with someone who really values it and trusts you, even if their budget is low, if their mission is good. I actually do encourage people to take jobs like that. Maybe not all the time. And obviously that's like a physical kind of conversation they have to have within their business, or with their wives or husbands. But there's a certain, I've experienced some of the best projects that I've ever had at discounted rates for the church for people who really did value what I was doing and who really trusted me. And some of the just most proud work that I've gotten to do has been in that, kind of in that mode. So yeah, I'm sure that there's going to be people who really disagree with me on that too, but that's my philosophy on it. So, all right. Well, last parting questions here. If you had to encourage everybody to read up on this subject or on the value of design, where would you point them? Or what podcasts or audiobooks or things would you suggest that they pursue?
Wow, that's a big question. I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there. Book that I've been reading recently, which I really kind of enjoyed and is written in a very kind of entertaining, relatable style, is a book called Almost Everything by Aaron Draplin, who's a designer. Mm-hmm. It's just a great book. It's full of his designs. He has a design style that I like, and it's very realistic. You know, it's jam packed full of stuff that he's done that's kind of, you know, inspiring and cool. And he's worked with some big brands and stuff like that. But he also has a very pragmatic, down to earth, and relatable understanding of design that he gets across, which I think is, you know, at the end of the day, that's one thing that appeals to me is, hey, yeah, you know, beauty is important and stuff, but at the end of the day, it's design. You know, mm-hmm. I mean, there are more important things. I think as designers, we can tend to sometimes occasionally overemphasize the importance of what we're doing, which can be good because it keeps you going. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, you know, that's your job and that's great, but things are more important, like your family and your relationship with God and stuff like that. So I like his down to earth style. So I would recommend that. Almost Everything, Aaron Draplin.
All right. Well, I will put that in the show notes. And thank you so much for the recommendation. And also thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to have the conversation and for everything that you've done in getting the grassroots movement started, especially for like your collaboration in Slack. I know you've always been so helpful with giving feedback and answering questions that people have in there. And that generosity is just something that I know a lot of people really appreciate. So thanks so much.
Thanks. Yeah, you bet. It's been fun talking to you.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, I will look forward to seeing you more in the group.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Bye, Sid.